Hello and welcome to Bold Talk. My name is Mary.
And I'm Adilni.
Thank you for joining us for this forum today. We are also joined by an audience, a wonderful audience, and they will be adding their thoughts and opinions on today's discussion. Just before we start, I'd just like to tell you a bit about Bold Talk. Bold Talk is an opinion-based show focusing on families and young people. The purpose of the show is to use it as an anchor platform for a voice for the unheard or those that feel unheard. Many young people feel like nobody listens to them at home or they just don't have anybody to confide in. I don't know about you, but I've experienced that growing up. And we would like to use Bold Talk as a podium for them, so that if they're facing any kind of issues and they just want somebody to mediate for them or somebody to listen to them, they can come here. Not just the young people, but also the parents. Because sometimes it can be stressful being a parent, and we do need someone to listen to us as well.
Also, we aim to bridge the gap between, obviously, any breakdowns within families. Now, do bear in mind, now we do say this, that we're not qualified experts, we're not psychiatrists or anything. This is just us discussing topics, giving our opinions. Now, if these opinions help you out, then by all means. If these opinions can serve as a solution to whatever it is that is going on with you, then great. If you do have questions, if you do have opinions on topics that you feel that we can deliberate on, the information will be at the bottom. So feel free to write in, feel free to send in your topics and your opinions.
Thank you very much. Right, today we are broadcasting from Hackney Town Hall, and we have the privilege of being hosted by Her Worshipful, the Speaker of Hackney, Councillor Sade Eti.
My name is Councillor Sade Eti, and I am the Speaker for London Borough of Hackney. Why have I decided to host this great forum? When I saw the objective, which has to do with the young people, I felt, look, I was once there. I'm a mother of 4 children, and if there is anything I can do to support, to encourage the youths, the upcoming leaders of tomorrow, I'm not here alone. This is the best borough you can think of. This is, yes, I'll tell you that, and I'll repeat it again. In Hackney Borough, we have diverse community. We work together as one, irrespective of our color, our race, our religion. We work together as one. We speak over 40 languages, and yet we work together as one community. In our midst today, thank you. In our midst today, I'd like to introduce a very, very important personality. She's our MP for Hackney North and Stoke Newington. She has always been extremely supportive to all the young, the old, within the borough. And also, she's on my right, and I have on my left Hackney Youth Parliament member who will have a say. But first of all, I'd like to introduce Diana Abbott MP.
Looking forward to hearing what you're going to talk about. I suspect the conversation will be more, will probably be better than in the Houses of Parliament where they shout all the time. So I'm very glad to have been invited.
Thank you. And I have the Hackney Youth Parliament.
Hello, so my name is Hanara. I'm a member of Hackney Youth Parliament. I'm here today so I can represent the voices of young people in Hackney, and I'm so happy to see many other young people here so we can speak up. We are the future of this country, so we deserve to be heard.
Great.
Before we go into the discussion, I'd just like to say a little bit about the topics and why we've chosen them. So we've chosen communication and the barriers of communication. Reason being, we use communication every day. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay, that was an example of communication. Yeah. So I would like to start by asking you guys, what do you think communication is and why is it important?
Please don't be shy, just feel free to jump in.
You know, it doesn't. It's not a matter of right or wrong. It's just what you think it is.
Exactly. The floor is now open. Obviously, they've asked what communication is.
I believe communication is important in order to help us to understand each other as we live together day to day.
That's a good point. I like that word, understand. Anybody else?
Yes, first I can say communication is about expressing myself, letting you know precisely what are my thoughts, my feelings about certain points and how we can address those points.
To me, communication is how we survive. If we don't communicate with each other, how can we go on with our everyday life? You go to a shop, you have to communicate with someone. When you see your neighbour, you have to communicate. Otherwise, how do you build relationships? How is your voice heard if you do not communicate?
I like that. And I think I saw you raise your hand.
they said it.
They said it. Oh, okay. So, yeah.
Communication is about being able to speak to people and also listen to them at the same time, just so we can understand each other.
Again, obviously, we have a key point here, which is understanding, to understand each other.
And there are different types of communication: verbal, facial, sign language. It's all communication. You're trying to transmit something to someone, either by just eye contact. No, you can't do that.
Like my co-host has been saying, we've got quite a lot of barriers that affect the way we communicate with people. That would affect the way I would speak to you. That would affect the way I would speak to you. I mean, what I'm trying to say is that if we can discuss those barriers. I mean, what do you think? What are things that would affect you from communicating with someone? Take, for instance, for me to communicate with my boss. What do you think will stop me from doing that? I saw a hand somewhere there.
It was pretty much just going on what she said and segueing into what she said. Communication is a tool, aside from the fact of you using mobile phone to communicate and all that, those are the physical tools. But communicating itself is also a tool as well. You can use it both good and for bad to disseminate good information as well as to cause us more trouble. So, and that goes into the barriers with communication as well. Youth might have problems communicating with their parents, and it might not be deliberate. It might just be as something they try to keep to themselves, try to handle for themselves. So of course that would cause a barrier between the relationship between them and their parents as well. But that's also their kind of tool as well, and it's a best mechanism to cope with things.
Excellent.
Can we please just bring her
I
reason being, because it's like she's read my format. If I was to read it to you, you will see that, yes, she's kind of just edited it and summarised it. I'm just going to briefly reference skillsyouneed.com. You've got to give props where props is due, Okay, so according to them, communication is a two-way process of sharing information, and it consists of, like the lady said over there, it consists of verbal and non-verbal factors. And she gave some examples: visual, sign language, even media is communication, and all different, like writing letters, emails. Listening is a form of communication. People think sometimes communicating, you always have to be the one talking. No, you have to be at the receiving end of communication as well, because otherwise it won't work. Moving on from that, the barriers of communication.
Yeah. Now you have different, according to psychologists, or according to what websites would say, different barriers of communication. You can have hearing impairments, disability, language, even noise as well. When you're being spoken over, those are the different things. Now, I mean, I'm sure you have other barriers that you can think of. So what other barriers do you think are there that will prevent people from communicating?
Fear. Yes, fear, because sometimes people fear to express themselves because they're worried about how people would accept them, how people would accept their opinions, whether or not people would make fun out of them. So I think fear is a big factor.
Fear is another brilliant one.
That's a very good one.
That's a very, very good one.
Thank you for that. As you said, fear. A lot of young people in the home. I mean, when you're at school and you're around your friends, it seems like everything's cushy. You just look at your friend and you think, oh, they've got the latest on and they're laughing at school, but everything's fine. But we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. That's why communication is important. One factor that's very important in communication is body language. As we're sat here, some of us are sat with our hands folded, others got legs crossed. Psychologists would say all of us that are sitting like this, we're closed. That means we're keeping something back. We don't want to give people access into, you know, we want to keep something to ourselves. Whereas those people that you see that lateral lounge, sit like this, they are quite happy. Normally, if you see someone sitting like that, correct me if I'm wrong, think of your friends and you see someone sitting like that, they're usually the outspoken one.
Yeah.
They're usually the one that doesn't think twice before they say what they want to say, they just drop it, bam, and that's it. That's just an example. But body language, especially within the home, I think that's a very important factor. Just to throw out there, how do you think parents can identify when issues are happening with their children, just by body language? What sort of things would be a telltale sign?
Change in body language.
But to do that, you have to be observant and you must have noticed it first.
Yeah.
What about if you're a parent that you're busy, you're working 3 jobs, you see your child every day, the child is bathed, they're clean, you've got your uniform, you've gone to school, fine. You don't know what you've done it. How are you going to know? If you're not a parent and you're a child, something's happening with you, how would you use body language to let your parents know something was wrong? Because not everybody wants to talk.
I was going to say it would be quite difficult for parents to be able to judge if anything was wrong with their child based on body language, but the sheer fact that you're not psychologists or anything. Now, the easiest way would be eye contact, of course. If your child can't look you in the face whilst they're talking to you, then you would have a good inkling that something's going on.
Yeah.
But here's the crux of the matter. As African children, you are raised not to directly look your parents.
Exactly.
So if something was wrong, really and truly, you couldn't still look them in the eyes and say, because they're wrong, you've been rude to me.
Yeah.
So I think that's a problem as well, especially when the child starts to grow up and you're no longer a baby anymore or a teenager and then you're becoming a youth, and there lies the problem. So really and truly, parents can't rely on body language, I just think it's ineffective, as you know, they understand.
That's brilliant. Okay. Habib, you wanted to say something as well?
I'm in support and I'm prepared to differ a little bit on what just said. Just because the way I see it, like I've got teenagers that they go to school.
Yeah.
When they come back, before they even go to their room, I ask them how their day was. So by knowing when they speak to me, how they interacted in the class, how they did in the playground, and their way coming back, I'll pick up some stuff. So I think from there, you might have an idea what your child is going through, how she's doing, and getting to know her. Again, also like when it comes to mealtime, try to have them at the table. You know, if they're not at the table or if they're on the phone all the time, I mean, I've got something about phone. Yes, I use my phone also, but there should be some time out when you don't use your phone. And when it comes to a change, like your daughter say, oh, hello daddy, hello mom, and they go to their room. Okay, you're going to take off your uniform, you're going to be coming down. 20 minutes, half an hour, we should be downstairs. We should be having a little family chit chat.
Yeah.
I think so. When you have that kind of like chit chat, you will pick up some things, unless you don't care about your child. I mean, I understand what you're saying. Like, okay, yeah, there's been problems too, but me, I try to fish out the problems at times. Like that, actually, they start creating the problems that is not there, but it's just a way of communicating. That okay, yeah, can actually talk to this man. I need to hide this from this man. You know, so I think it's all about like actually putting yourself forward to your children at times, and like black people or Asian that was raised back home and they had the opportunity to come here, we've got the best of both sides now. Because what we were saying, yes, I went through the same thing, but I'm reversing what I went through with my parents. I don't want the same thing to happen with my kids. So to have that communication, let them look me in the eye. My daughter this morning, when they want something, they're all like, I'll tell them to do something. Oh, I don't want to.
It sounds all too familiar.
But it's still a communication. I mean, my dad can't tell me, mom tell me that, do something, I say I don't want to. It's not even that. Then I have to explain to her why she has to do it, who is in charge. But I didn't have that. But I take it like, I kind of like, I'm sure people saying this for about, kind of like enjoy it, because I'm talking to her, I know there's a communication there, there's a relationship going on, but, you know, that is like, you know, 1, 2, straight bang, you know, that, you know, but I'm kind of like seeing it in a different way.
Just briefly, I'm sorry, I believe that MP has something to say.
Well, I think that most parents, if you know a child, you can kind of see when something is a bit wrong. You know what they say, partly their body language, partly. Not to say my son hasn't successfully kept things from me, but I just think you have an instinct for children. But the other thing I was going to say about communication, in a borough like Hackney, where there are so many communities, Ghanaian, Nigerian, Sierra Leone, Jamaican, Vietnamese, Indian, one of the challenges is getting good communication between each group. Because, and I think it makes for a better society if we can communicate, not just within our own family, but within different groups in a borough like Hackney.
That's a very, very valuable point. Being that language could be a communication barrier as well.
Yeah.
If you're in a community where you don't speak, for example, you're at school and your friend starts to speak in their mother tongue and you think all of a sudden they're making fun of you when probably they're not, but it's just something we do. So language can be a very big factor in barriers to communication.
What do you think can happen when communication breaks down? Because
that's a good question.
I don't know about you. I've had instances where I'm trying to speak to convey something across. Now, I'll give an instance. You're upset. Now, most people can talk. Most people get very vocal when they're upset. For me, I have what is called a delayed reaction when I'm upset. When you get upset to the point where that you actually want to put across, all of a sudden it escapes your mind at that precise moment. And then maybe 5-10 minutes later, when you're now calm, that's when everything comes flooding back to you. At that point, the moment has passed. You can't express what you want to say. However, the person that has offended you is long gone by then. So you now sit there stewing. So in a scenario where the communication has broken down, what sort of implications can there be?
So when the communication possibly breaks down in a family, the young person is most likely to go to someone else, and that someone else might not be good, they might be bad, so they'll have a bad influence on that child. And I think this is where institution comes in. We young people, we spend most of the time in schools. It's great we learn science, history, maths, however we have to be prepared for life skills as well. They have to teach us the basic life skills. People assume that young people are just so outspoken, they're confident, they're expressive. But no, not everyone's like that. If you teach us that, then maybe yes, we can be expressive. And from there, this way institutions can also come into families, maybe have workshops, maybe have parents and children days where they learn about each other more, where the time is dedicated solely to the child. And maybe the institution can teach them, how can you be expressive, how can you communicate better with the young person, especially in communities where there might be a language barrier. You know, the child might be Indian or African and the child speaks much more English than the home language. So workshops like that would definitely work for them, and keeping the child informed of what the child is doing regularly, so they can also take part in the achievements of the child, so the child doesn't feel sad that yes, my parents do not know about this, and I can't even tell them because I don't know how to speak the language properly. So it's not only up to the child, institutions around them have to help them out.
A follow-up to that. You've mentioned obviously where the communication breaks down, where the actual child in question would go somewhere else. Now, put yourself in that particular position. Now, how would you expect your parents to communicate with you? The reason why I ask you this is because growing up as a young man, now I was talkative. When I was outside of the house, when I was in school, I was all over the shop. When I came home, it was a completely different ballgame. Now I could talk to my mom to an extent, but with my dad I was a middle child. So as a middle child, I felt I had no favorites. My mom, my dad was with my sister. My mom had my younger brother. I was in the middle, so I couldn't talk to either one of them. But that was an African household, and you see, with African, that is pretty much normal. next to normal. Now,
sorry to cut you off. We say that's in African households. It's not every single African home, so we don't know. But that's the general gist. That's how they are in African homes.
Exactly. That's general consensus. But what would, if you put yourself in that particular position, what would you expect your parents, or what would you expect your home life to be?
So if I was in that position, I would really appreciate if my parents could just sit down there and just talk about me. Try to ask me basic questions. How was your day? What have you been doing? I've seen you been acting a bit funny. Is everything okay? Is there anything I can do? We just want that personal connection. And when you develop that personal connection, you will feel as a child more confident to say anything else that you want to say to your parents. But if your parents do not give you time, you'll feel like no one's there for you.
Okay.
You know, no one really cares about my voice, so what should I do? And I have seen people where they go seek relationships online because people around them are not helping them. And that's a shame. They're seeking help from strangers, and not all strangers are good. You know, and then that leads to them making bad decisions. You know, people have to ensure, you know, that young people receive that training and the encouragement that you should be confident with who you are. You know, your voice matters. You're an individual. Be proud of your culture. Be proud of tradition. You are who you are. You know, and from there, you know, once they have the confidence, they'll feel more happy on going on to different channels, speaking out, just fighting for the basic rights.
I want to be For some young people, maybe that's not the approach they want. Maybe they feel like they have been, the parents are being too nosy. Maybe they just want to keep some things to themselves. So what's another approach that could be used? For example, how would you like your parents to communicate with you better?
I don't really know, but I think when I come back from school, they should be able to ask me, how are you okay? Through that, I think they should, you should know how your child sounds to you when they come back from school. Oh, I feel this, I feel that. But when you come back from school and you don't sound alright, your parents should be able to tell that, no, you're not okay. So I think that's what I want.
If I could just follow up from that. Now, in a scenario where if you're introverted, take for instance you're an introverted person. Now there are some parents that would take a slightly more radical approach, in the sense that they need to know everything that's going on with you, everything that goes on inside your room, everything that goes on inside on your phone. So pretty much you have nothing to yourself. Now, do you think that would be a good approach for them to be aware of things, or would you prefer that, in as much as they've asked you such and such, that you would prefer to be the one to bring them into certain things, rather than them having to know every inch of your life?
Yeah, I think so. I prefer, I should tell them, not them asking me, things. Because some people, they just like to keep to themselves. They don't like telling their parents things. But when it gets to a state that they feel disturbed, they think, oh, I need to tell my parents, I need to let them know how I'm feeling. I don't feel alright. Maybe something's going through their mind. They need to tell their parents about things.
Just to go back to what I believe you were speaking about before, I think the key thing is being proactive. Whether you're speaking to them after school, or whether it's during dinner time, I think the key thing is being proactive, but being proactive with an objective. And you said before, in terms of whether your child is introverted, whether your child is probably outspoken, or whether they want to keep things to themselves, is relative. But the objective is to create the feeling in the child that you are there to support them, that you care about them, and that you're concerned about their well-being. So then you're creating different opportunities for them to interact with you. You have to take the proactive stance. And just to go one more further, because we keep talking about the parent-child relationship, children learn so many things from parents. And they learn initially in terms of how to communicate by seeing, hopefully, who's communicating already. So the mum and dad. or whoever is the guardian. So already, if you're having situations where the guardians are showing healthy communication, establishing different points where they're interacting in themselves, it's already showing the child hopefully healthy communication patterns. And so when you initiate a conversation with them, they've already seen these key points between you and your spouse or the guardians, and they understand this is a comfortable forum where hopefully they see mum and dad talking and they weren't judgmental and they weren't shouting, and they realise these people genuinely have concern for me.
Just before I call on Grace, Your Worship, if you care to weigh in.
What am I going to say? Honestly, every point has been valuable. But as a mother and as a parent myself, it's a two-way thing, the communication. Like she said, it's not when your parents talk to you or when they ask you how you're faring. Amongst all of us here, how often do you care about your mom or dad to even think, oh, hello mom or dad, how was your day today?
I'll be honest.
It's very clear as well. It's a two-way thing. But it is the responsibility of the mom and the father to do what is right in terms of communicating nicely. And I agree with what you said. It's very, very important for parents to watch what they do, because children pick up with regards to action much more than what they're being taught. So it's a two-way balance. And one thing I learned from when I was growing up, when I was much younger, anytime you are angry, if you think you are extremely angry, just walk away. Walk away and do your breathe in, breathe out. And I have grown up with that. So there is nothing, anywhere, anytime that will happen, I will always walk away, do my breathe in, breathe out, and then come back to it. I will always go back to the person, either I'm right or wrong, to ask, I don't like what you have done. This is what you did to me. And then we'll be able to sort it out. But we must learn the ability of one, to be calm, one, while the other is up. Because when both of you are hot, two irons does not, what does it say?
Iron sharpens iron.
Exactly. So, iron sharpens iron does not work.
It doesn't work. No,
Seriously, it does not work. So it's not, it's all in it. It's all about, So it's one to the other, and then you'll be able to get a right balance.